Hey YouTube, this is my first video about the future of and what I think is going to be a very scary one. I'm here at a parking lot here. Gonna try to get a workout in, but who the hell knows. Um, so lately I've been feeling a little bit like there is not much of a future. Human purpose seems to be at all-time lows. Loneliness has skyrocketed. Dating feels like a chore rather than fun for people. Everyone seems to be, everyone seems to be in this like need to like already be in in especially in baseball, they have the term like mid-season form where, the first few weeks of a season, maybe teams that are expected to be very good, maybe start off slow, or teams that are really maybe expected to finish last have this like red hot week or a couple of weeks, and they're like, they start the first month up, and they're like, maybe after 30 games, they're like, you know, 21-9 or something like that, and it's just. And then they fall back because the mid-season hits. And it seems like in dating, it seems like everybody wants to start a relationship in like mid-season form. And it's just been a fucking disaster. Um, you know, the job market, I just don't see much of a future in. Everything's AI this, AI that. There is no field that I would deem as secure for a future. Um, Everything seems to be very much about chat GPT, algorithm this, and it's all, I know the word dystopian is like basically like that should basically be the next word of the, word of the year, dystopian. I mean, everything's described as dystopian these days, and the question you have to ask is everything dystopian these days? Um, and I do kind of think that things are getting kind of rough. But I do have hope that, maybe we can turn it around as a people or a country. I mean, I don't like the modern day society that thinks it's just if my guy got into office. I mean, you know, it's not going to work like that. Um, I maintain that a large chunk of the economy is being destroyed. It's not some weird hidden agenda by the elites, even if the elites do cocky shit and manipulate markets. They obviously do. The real issue, I think, is people don't really go out and do things anymore. They don't try new things. Everyone's content, to wake up and consume digital media all day, but then they go to bed and they kind of wonder where their day went. Um, I understand the irony of building a YouTube channel to explain my hatred for the internet, but I guess maybe it's a if you can't beat them, join them type of mentality. I don't think this is going to cure my problems, and it might make things worse for me, but I guess it's at least important for me to put my ideas out there while I'm still somewhat sane. I think one of the things that really has been irking me lately is how the term like the concept of like behavioral sinks, I just notice them a lot more um in a lot of different subcultures and everything. It's like a good example of this is, the mall my apartment that I'm is about maybe about a mile away from a mall that used to be very busy, and now it's kind of dying. I wouldn't say it's a dead mall yet, but it's kind of getting there. And one of the things I noticed is just back in the early, even as recent as maybe like the mid 2000s, you would go there on random even weeknights, and it would be kind of busy. And you would go there on weekends, and it would be there'd just be people there. There'd be just younger people there. There'd be all sorts of different shops for people. There were stores for more geekier people. There were stores for the more upscale posh people. There were stores for younger, teenagers trying to fit in high school. There were stores for even like 50 and 60 somethings trying to like, fix maybe something bad about their back and wear and tear on their body. And it was just, it seemed like things were just like, there was like a healthy, there was just like, there was stuff, there was just things. Now everything is just, it feels like weird, like dying clothing brands or like one shop locations of like these small businesses that kind of seem shady when you walk in there because there's never any people. And, people act like, well, why do malls suck now? Well, it's because no one goes, but it's like, well, it's like, it's the behavioral sink. fewer people are going now than there were even like flash forward from the mid 2000s to the early to mid 2010s. It's like fewer people, there were more people at malls then than there are now, but malls in general, it's like, but it's like, but the people were noticing the malls were, "Oh, this is getting a little crappier. Oh, now things are more expensive because fewer people are going in, and the velocity of money is slowing down." One of the things that, I consider myself more left wing than right wing. I was actually, even though I do have some issues with the left when it comes to their their obsession with the term social constructs. Um, One thing that one thing I can't stand about the right is how they complain about Social Security being a Ponzi scheme. And, I actually can argue both directions. I mean, it's, first of all, it's a very, it's a very surface level definition. It's like, in order for something to be a Ponzi scheme, there kind of has to be a lie involved. And it's like, we know where the money's coming from and we know where the money's going to. So we kind of know what's going on. But, when it comes to but it's like, I can see like when like right wingers or libertarians talk about Social Security being a Ponzi scheme. I mean, I can kind of see it. Again, I think it's a very surface level definition, and I would also say it's a very generous definition. But the criticism and the rebuttal, I would say, is, well, can't you explain? I mean, doesn't that explain capitalism too? Isn't cap? I mean, if your favorite restaurant is a bunch of, if what's propping it up is like Senior Citizen Wednesday, where they get their 15% off and their free slice of pie, and those people are a decade or less from croaking, well, that's less revenue for that business. That means it's going to shrink in size. That means it's going to lose revenue. It's going to be closer to failure. And the same thing you're seeing with the malls. Fewer people are going in. That means the cost for each individual store to succeed is going to, the cost per person who walks in there to shop is going to go up, which means they have to pay more, which means, the behavior, which means they're going to be turned off by it, which means it's going to shrink, which means it's going to die. So, can capitalism, does Social Security fail if you have an aging population? Well, I don't know if I'd say it'll straight up fail, but it will need to be reworked heavily. But so would capitalism. And the aging population of the United States, I think, is very noticeable now. It's been noticeable, I would say, for about 10 to 12 years. Definitely since COVID, but I would say 10 to 12. Really, I would say since like the late aughts, early 10s, which is getting to be closer to 15, 20 now. So I don't know exactly how to really keep going with why should we keep all these systems afloat? Why is capitalism this thing that's sacred? It's not working either. Why is it not working? Because it requires people. Well, everything requires people. Socialism requires people on board. Capitalism requires people. People trying new things. When it's another thing is like when you go, like, the only things I see that are busy these days are like, the gym. I'm about to go work out. Gyms are more crowded than ever. There's going to be like 5 people with Instagram their little kickstands and their phones out, recording their stupid, dumb shit. I do miss gym culture. To me, gym culture peaked in like, I guess, I know a lot of really older people. When I talk, the gyms that I worked out at before COVID would have some older people, like 50 and 60 somethings even. And they would all talk about the glory days of like the late 80s, early 90s. And even though I was not, I was alive, but barely in the early 90s. I mean, I have to agree. Like, it's like I can at least like observe what they've said, and sometimes you'll see the occasional video footage of like whatever, a gym, whatever, things like that, and I can see what they're talking about. Sometimes you can like look at a place and say, oh, this place would have this place would have been really fun to be in the, imagine working for Microsoft in like 1996 or maybe like 94. I could just tell you, like, I guarantee you, like part of you would probably, be stressful for deadlines, but also like there'd probably be like a weird, I don't know if I'd say optimism in the air, but like a weird sense of like, wow, we're like really just growing, like we're just booming to fucking hell right now. And even some of the mid-level employees probably saw some of that wealth, not as much as maybe they deserve, but still they saw some of it. Not to mention you're probably making $100K a year even then, and $100K a year in 1995 is, when rent was $900 a month for a decent sized apartment. You were killing it on $100K. $100K now is still pretty good, but it's better than most people. But when rent is $2,000 a month almost everywhere you fucking go, it's a little bit different now than it was even 5 to 7 years ago, let alone almost 30. Yeah, I mean, I really am getting a little frustrated with the world. I mean, one of the things that's been irking me, this is going to be a topic for maybe another video if I get any sort of response to this one. But I've been thinking about making some channels about just I hope it doesn't become too doomer, but it is kind of going that direction. But I really just can't stand, the people who believe in like, my one thing I believe in will fix all the problems. I have some right-wing friends who think it's just, oh, we need to be more capitalist. Well, that's, I would argue, again, a Ponzi scheme. And then they're hypocrites where they'll say like, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. It's like, yeah, but like a lot of people, a lot of the businesses that as this country ages to hell, a lot of the businesses that these older people are shopping at are literally using their Social Security check because they didn't save anything because the 401k, every article you read on all these websites like Business Insider, they all say the same thing. Every generation's 401ks are not where they're supposed to be. Millennials are not where they're supposed to be. Gen X, Zoomers, what little they're going to have right now, but maybe some Zoomers will have some, the oldest Zoomers are in the workforce. And then, the boomers who are, the last of the boomers are maybe still in the workforce. The youngest boomers, maybe like a late 50s birth, might still be in there. But they're starting to take out, but they don't have enough. They didn't save enough themselves in a lot of ways. So I think there's a lot of problems on the horizon, and the 401k's capitalism is all hell. In fact, it's also a Ponzi scheme, because if the boomers have all the money, if the boomers are a large generation, they're a large number of people, and they're the ones who are going to be cashing in, well, guess what? They're selling their shares. A 401k is most people's 401ks are ETF funds that they're going to be selling at whatever limit price they decide to sell at. If an ETF is trading for $22 a share, they're selling at $22. Well, that's going to cause the prices to go down, which means the capital is lost. It's almost, again, capitalism is a Ponzi scheme. So is Social Security. Is life itself a Ponzi scheme? Now, under the definition of what right-wingers complain about Social Security, I would argue life itself is a Ponzi scheme. You're going to die one day. And that's value lost. That's a net worth lost when you're dead. And if more people are closer to death than youth, which is every census we've seen of the past couple of them have said America is aging. You have to wonder. So I do think the right wing is being kind of stupid when they talk about, capitalism and Social Security. Capitalism is not going to fix your problems. Capitalism and socialism might both be your problem in a way. Maybe you're spending too much time talking about it. Who cares? Why don't you go outside and start hobbies, do new things, meet new people, try to force other people to get off their asses and not do things to, you can band together, and that's a little bit of like a socialist thing, to band together in a small commune or whatever. But I don't really mean it for living purposes, but I mean it for just going out and exploring the world, and you're going to be happier. I hope people at least ponder what I'm saying. I really can't stand this future. I also, one thing I think is, throughout the late 90s, I remember in the late 90s when I was real young, they were already trying to get youth. I mean, I was, not even a decade old really. And they were already talking about, we need to get more youth involved in politics. And especially by the time I hit middle school, they were talking about making the youth get involved. And it's like, I actually think maybe it was better when politics didn't have the youth involved. Because that means the youth were probably doing something else. They were going out and doing shit. They were going out and exploring the world. They were going out and creating things. I mean, that's what the boomers did. As much as we shit on the boomers, at least they kind of lived their 20s and their teens and 20s and early 30s the right way. They were, they protested. They had their peace movements and stuff like that. But what was Woodstock 69 or whatever really about? It was about music and fucking each other on the in the farm field or whatever. And yeah, okay, it was about being peace and maybe anti-Vietnam or whatever. Vietnam was kind of, I don't know if that was even really important back then by then. But like, yeah, so like the youth were involved politically, but it also seemed like they weren't as much. Or they at least translated it into like something to like build and just at least talk and meet people with and, you know, maybe do other things. I'd have to interview boomers more about that though. I mean, I could be wrong about that particular. It just seems like, you know, the younger half of millennials and you know, the post, you know, the social media age, you know, if you're a millennial born in like 83, you kind of, you know, that is you know, millennials, I guess, are described as like 81 to like 97, 98, 99. And, you know, it seems like the older half kind of got it right. Then that middle millennial, like that real late 80s births, not early 90s births, I fall in like in the early 90s area. We're kind of like hit or miss. We're like some of us made it out of the fucking event horizon and some of us didn't. And then if you're a latter half of the millennials, you know, 94 births, whatever, it seems like you're an honorary Zoomer because it just seems like whatever's happening to you, it's just happening to Zoomer 10, 15 fold. And I guess you would say the millennials, the middle millennials who didn't make it out, they're kind of like an honorary Zoomer in that regard too. And I kind of label myself that way. I mean, I am not of Zoomer age by any means, but when it comes to just my landscape and my life, it's very Zoomer-esque. I actually bond with a lot of them in that regard, and they sometimes even, you know, tell me like I was playing basketball at a gym, and I was talking to them after a few games, and I was you know, me being older than them, I was getting a little bit like worn down my knees and stuff. And they were like, "Oh, we always forget you're already in your 30s." And I was like, "Well, I'm first of all barely in my 30s, but second of all, I guess I'm fully vested into the 30s now, you know. So there's that." But yeah, I've been very frustrated with things, and I don't know exactly what the future is. I hope people listen to this and maybe get a few comments or subscribers from it as I try to build out the channel. Just to at least meet people and socialize, and hopefully we can bond together, you know, and at least use, you know, I'm going to try to use the internet for good and actually try to get people, you know, maybe I'll use this is going to sound weird, but you know, to use the death trap of the internet to get us out of the death trap. Hopefully I can do this. I'm nervous about all this, but I'm going to try to help anybody who wants to really, you know, at least be you know, who wants to communicate and at least, you know, we'll try to respond to comments or, I'm not going to meet people in the flesh. Probably not. I'm a little nervous about doing stuff like that, but just my thoughts and, I'm out.